before Freud, I guess, the mind was, it's complicated because Freud, of course, was not the only person to be thinking along the lines that he thought. Pierre Janet, who was one of his teachers, had originated and started to develop many of the ideas that I would say were popularized by Freud. But the idea of the unconscious mind was certainly not as well developed prior to Freud as it became afterwards. And you might say that insofar as people thought of the mind at all, they thought of in philosophical terms, and the mind would be that part of you that you're aware of, like in the Cartesian sense. Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am," and it kind of seems in some sense self-evident that you're aware of and have control over the contents of your own mind. But that was what Freud really questioned, and he questioned it deeply. He said, well, first of all, the idea that you're one thing, like one mind, is a dubious idea to begin with, because people are full of internal contradictions. And then the idea that your mind is all of one type, it's all of one form, was also very questionable as far as Freud was concerned, because you could be fractionated into subcomponents. And you know, the idea, for example, that your anger or your sexual desire could be an autonomous part of your personality in some sense, that it could overtake you and control you, that's really a Freudian idea. And one of the classic Freudian ideas really is that people are made out of subpersonalities, and those subpersonalities are alive. And that's one of the things I really like about the psychoanalytic thinkers, because even the psychologists still really haven't come to terms with the idea in any deep sense that these unconscious processes are living things. You know, when psychologists talk, for example, about the cognitive unconscious, they're talking about something that they describe in more machine-like, with more machine-like metaphors, and that's not reasonable. You understand things a lot better if you understand that the subcomponents that make up people, the fragmentary bits of them, and also the biological subsystems that are part and parcel of your being, are much more intelligently viewed as personalities. They're kind of unidimensional personalities in some sense, so that, for example, if you're angry, you're nothing but angry. I mean, that's an overstatement, obviously. Or if you're afraid, you're nothing but afraid. Or if you're hungry, you're nothing but hunger. Well, that's certainly true if you get hungry enough, or thirsty, or too hot, or any of those things. You kind of collapse to a simpler personality that only has one motivation in mind. And we'll talk a lot as we progress about the grounding of those unidimensional motivational systems in biology. But I'd have to say that Freud was among the first, at least the first, to synthesize a coherent theory of this multiplicity, and to put it forth while also insisting that much of what was happening to you and inside of you was not immediately accessible to your awareness. And it's a very profound discovery. It means, among many other things, that you can formulate ideas. First of all, it means that you can act out things that you don't understand for reasons that you don't understand. It also means that your memory can contain things that's represented in one way, but that can't be understood in another. So, for example, and we know this is true because there are independent memory systems. There's an independent memory system for procedures, that's for actions. There's an independent memory system for what you might describe as imagination, for the memory that uses images. And then there's another system that articulates knowledge, that's the semantic memory system. And it's not obvious at all that the contents of all of those are equivalent. And that's why, for example, you can dream things that you don't know, because one of the things you might think is that your dreams watch you act, and they watch other people act, and then they make a little drama out of that, and that drama has information in it, but you don't necessarily know what that information is, in that you can't describe it consciously, right? It's akin to the Piagetian idea that kids can play a game, and you can take them away from the game, and then they won't know how to describe the rules, even though they could play the game. And so dreams can contain information that's full of the encoding of behavior that has information in it that you're not consciously aware of. And so then you can become consciously aware of that in a kind of a revelation, say. Maybe that's what you do when you become aware of the meaning of a dream, or the meaning of a fantasy, or something like that. And that's all our ability to think that way, in some ways, can be traced back to Freud.